I've always been a big admirer of your influence on the bands that you've been in. I mean, we've known each other for God knows. I mean, not great, not close friends or anything, but we've been acquaintances for nigh on 40 years, haven't we? Really, we've been through similar kind of band experiences in the late 70s, early 80s, and stuff. I'm really curious to get your kind of take on various things, because a lot of people who I interview are self-taught, and you clearly are not. I mean, everybody teaches themselves to a certain extent, but you were traditionally trained, weren't you? You had a lot of training, and in fact, you were at the Royal College of Music. Is that right?
Well, I got a place at the Royal Academy of Music.
Royal Academy, sorry.
But I trained a lot of my training was at the Huddersfield School of Music.
Right. And are you grateful for that? I presume you are.
I am, yeah. I am really now, in retrospect. But it wouldn't have appeared so at the time, because I did a quick explosive get out right in the middle of my head. And it disappeared. And so they must think I was very ungrateful. But, it's water under a bridge from a long time ago now. But I was very grateful because, I mean, I was looked after. I was looked after. I got, in a way that I was given a chance because I was, it wasn't looking too good for me. I mean, I didn't pass my 11 plus, and I went to a pretty sort of dead basic, quite depressing school called Mount Pleasant, just out in Huddersfield, just outside Huddersfield. And so I'm grateful because in the first year, I was looking for something to pick myself up because I felt such a failure. I had an elder brother that was 3 years older than me that was very academic, and he'd just gone to the new grammar school, So this has got all the makings of a suicide, really, isn't it? I'm joking. So I won't bang on too much about this, but
we're here to bang on about you. That's what we're here for.
But the thing is, to cut to the chase, what happened in my first year was that an orchestra came and just played a small orchestra in a chapel. We used to have ensembles in a chapel, the morning assemblies, and that's where I played eventually in the school orchestra every morning for 4 years. And it had a balcony, and so in some ways it was. When I think back of it now, it feels like a gig. Because it had a balcony, and I got excited about people up on the balcony and stuff. But first of all, it was just this orchestra playing and saying that you can learn the instrument, and it became something I could reach for. I had to talk my parents into it. I'm a working class guy, bugger all money, and lived in a lovely part of Huddersfield, 3 miles to the west, a place called Netherton at the top of a hill. So nothing to complain about. I had a great childhood, lovely countryside and everything.
Oh, Huddersfield is I mean, it doesn't sound like it. The name Huddersfield doesn't sound very attractive, but the town itself is one of the most beautiful towns in Yorkshire, I think, for its size. I really like Huddersfield. I've always liked it. The hills around there are beautiful.
Yeah, lovely hills, yeah. Yeah, so I got the chance to learn the violin, and I think I just got onto something. And I think in some ways I got onto it, the impetus and energy was because I felt so knocked by failing my 11 plus, because I was like a popular kid, and I did well at maths. I had things like, when I was at primary school, I'd get all my maths equations correct. And I remember getting these stars for it when this teacher came. So, but it just all went a bit tits up when I went to the junior school, when they started introducing other stuff like, I don't know, we did algebra or something. I don't know. I just lost the plot, really. But you had a lot of arithmetic in music, and so I could bring that back, and I could associate with what I was good at before it all went a bit skew with learning for the 11 plus. So I got a lot of energy, and I soon found myself, I had a good teacher. This is the thing. I am grateful. There were people being after, people that didn't have the money, and that I really was lucky. Because I was immediately, as soon as I started working in the youth orchestra, part of the youth orchestra, all the violinists were lucky because they'd started when they were about 5.
Right.
I'd start till I was 11, but that's simply because they could afford, and we couldn't. But and also, it was great at school because, like I said, I was on the stage every morning, and that was a really nice feeling. I just like being on the stage. Playing in the school orchestra, you'd start with a classical composition, and then they'd do the service, and then there'd be a hymn, so you'd play that. And so I felt...
people really underestimate the impact that teaching music and having music as part of the everyday routine in schools, how important that is to people, to give a sense of roundness and humanity to your experience at junior and secondary schools. And this is all being railed back now, isn't it, by the current government? And I can't bear it. It just breaks my heart. I mean, I teach music now, and yeah. So, so you learned violin was the main thing for you, was it, in the early days?
Yeah.
And viola, and
no, the viola came second. I don't want to tell me if I'm getting boring because
you're not getting boring. Carry on.
Okay, it's just that when I got to sort of the 4th year, they decided that I was able, my ability was good enough to go to the music college. They were looking out for me, and they talked to the lead CEO of the music department, and they organised for me to start learning the viola in my 4th year. So while I was still playing violin, they taught me viola on Saturday morning. Oh. But I mean, that stopped me from playing football. So immediately I was picked out at school as being, hang on, you're different from us, you're a bloody squat. All of a sudden I was this
puff.
Has a fancy pants, intelligent geezer who thinks he's going off to college.
Yeah. I got bullied at school because of the same thing, really. Whereas I'd much rather have been the captain of the football team like you were, weren't you? Or you had to give all that stuff up. Yeah.
So people found out that you were learning music. Were you learning music at school?
Yeah, I mean, I just had a natural aptitude for it. But I never got any formal training or anything. But I was always kind of at the top of my class at school. And they would try...
Top of your class on everything, yeah? I mean...
Just generally, yeah. And... I wasn't a SWAT in any shape or form, and
so that's why you were bullied.
Yeah, that's why I was bullied at school, and then when I got to secondary school, they wanted me to go to, to apply for the Oxbridge exam, and then my parents were so poor, they couldn't even afford to subsidise me going to any university, let alone Oxford and Cambridge, so it never happened. So, I mean, people don't understand the kind of nature. I've lived in London for 35 years now, and people in the southeast can't really dig what poverty is, or was in those big...
Couldn't they just get a small grant to enable you to train it?
But you'd need to top that up, and they didn't have any money, spare money at all. My dad was a steel worker, and my mum was just looking after all the kids, and we had no money. We often ran out of money before my dad got his wage every Friday. And I'm not blubbering here.
We used to hear stuff like that. Me and my brother.
Yeah,
he was an older brother. He was 3 years older. We used to hear these terrible rows in the kitchen on Thursday when he brought his wage.
Yes,
because she kept drumming into him that he didn't seem to understand about certain things. We used to hear these rows. Well, he did understand, but they just didn't have trying to make the money stretch out. But I must admit, Martin, then to hear what your experience, I was just really lucky. I was got through by the skin of my teeth. And later on, when I was up to music college, my brother was very resentful towards me because it turns out that they held back on him being able to go to university.
Oh, no.
And I got it a bit in the neck from my brother, And there was a point ironically, that when I walked out of the music college, this was 1969, I joined a band immediately. There was this drummer that was from Huddersfield, and they were in Huddersfield, and I jammed with them, left and just disappeared. And I was in a commune in Norfolk for about 3 months, jamming, learning how to improvise, and in London as well. Great. And then later on in the year, just before Christmas, we did a gig back in Huddersfield, and I got kicked out. And they wouldn't let me back home unless I got a job. So I was at the foot of, I should try telling that to my son. So I was in the same bedroom with my brother. He had the big double bed, and I was at the end on a camp bed going to some plastics company called Plessis, getting up at 6:30 in the morning while he was going off. He was in insurance. He was traveling across to Leeds. And can you imagine us two in the same I'd completely blown it. And I'm going to some terrible bloody job. And he's in the same bedroom as me. The luckiest thing about it is we both had to get up about the same time. About 6:30.
People can't relate to that stuff. I was looking at your website, and there's some. Is it your website anyway? There were some lovely photos of you when you were young in various things like the Polycordia Quartet.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It was almost like pre-getting into bands, being in a quartet. The good thing about being a viola player, a good viola player, was, well, there wasn't that many of them, and also I could get in with the best fiddle players. So the Polycordia Quartet consisted of two brothers, Rayford Kitchen and Vaughan Kitchen, quite posh names.
Yeah,
and it was lovely, But I was also obviously aware of the class thing, But it was just great to be doing it, and we did some competitions. Yeah.
So I read also that you were you've always been interested in art, and a bit like me, interested in the stuff that's on the periphery. Now, I mean, I'm not particularly. I love pop and rock and Bowie and and rock to music and blah 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 and all that stuff, but the thing that differentiates people like you and me from a lot of other people at that time is it seems like we were similar in as much as we like the stuff that were on the periphery. So you were, you liked, Bartok and Schoenberg and, Varese and I was the same, and myself and Phil Oakey.
Well, you could just like that as well, yeah.
Yeah, we would listen to like experimental improvisational jazz, and early computer, electronic, written by computer though, but programmed by Xenakis and stuff like that.
Yeah, there were some guys at the time, like at that time when Varese was around. There was another guy that they would stop the orchestra. This is the only way they could bring it into the form of classical music. They'd stop the orchestra and turn on a tape recorder, and then you'd hear all this electronic mute sound, and then that would stop, and then the orchestra would start up again. I can't remember. That might have been Varese. No, I think it was someone else that began with it. I've forgotten that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So you were out there listening.
Yeah. But of course we couldn't play any instruments apart from.
But don't you think it just gets into your head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the sounds and the feelings of that weird time, the 1940s, and the dreadful feeling of Europe after seeing the war and after the war, and it's you can hear it. It's expressed through the string sounds,
Yeah, kind of an angular kind of. Well, not just dissonance, but it's like the blending of the worlds of musique concrète and found sounds and all that stuff. It fascinated me. And it's only later on that I realised a lot of the bands that I liked at that time were just as interested in experimenting with tape manipulation as they were being like traditional musicians. Like, I've become friends with the BBC Radiophonic Workshop now, who do these amazing presentations showing you how like the Doctor Who theme tune was built up. And there aren't any synthesizers on that. there aren't any synthesizers on that. So it's all found sounds that they record onto tape and then manipulate the tape and then splice it together and create. The only thing there is a tuning oscillator which does the and all that. So things like that, I kind of intuitively understood at the time, but didn't really know how to do it. And then, of course, synthesizers come along and it all makes sense. And another thing that struck me when I was looking at your background, you said you liked a band called Spirit. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
There was a song they did, which is one of my favourite songs, called Nature's Way. Do you know that song?
Nature's Way.
Nature's Way.
Nature's Way. No, I don't think so. It sounds familiar. But the one that struck me the most is called something like Mechanical Man.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
Man. It's almost like a bit futuristic type title. And the reason why I like that is because I was getting a bit blown away in 1967 by the psychedelia movement.
Yeah.
And of course, I was blown away by Terry Riley.
Yeah.
Some mischievous friend. I think it was the drummer of the band I ended up joining when I was 19. I'd be in someone's flat, and I remember him putting on Terry Riley specifically.
Amazing.
What my reaction would be,
Like Terry Riley in C, was it?
Yeah, in C. No, the one he played was Rainbows in Curved.
Yeah.
To go back to like you mentioned, Spirit. Yeah. What I was interested in was that these people in bands were feeling like inventors and composers. They were beginning to feel like, hang on a minute, this could be where I should be, really.
Yeah.
Thinking, because when I was at music college, when I loved harmony, but I immediately wanted to experiment with it. So in the second year, I had this lovely woman that taught us called Mrs. Clare. She let me play some compositions, and you can imagine, can't you? I should have been slapped around the face.
Nah.
and my viola teacher, Mr. Warren, he was an amazing artist, Mr. Warren. His approach towards me, I believed, I just worshipped him. I just loved the way he looked. He was an artist. He chopped his own hair and he had jumpers on back to front, paint all over him, baggy trousers. And it was brilliant, blonde-haired bloke. It looked amazing. And he found out about this. And when I had a lesson, he took issue with it and said, I've heard about you playing in the harmony class. What is it that you think you've got that people want to hear?
Interesting.
Like it really belittled. I felt belittled. And that's what he was deliberately doing. And it sounds like I've made a big issue out of this throughout my life, but I'm telling you the truth.
No, it's interesting, but I do think that people in music colleges and the further along you get,
classical world, it's almost like you've got to be from a certain, almost as a certain class that you're worthwhile to be able to communicate. So when I heard about Spirit, it was a bit like, hang on, there's something happening now, and these people are saying we're getting old at this, and we're going to do it ourselves, because that a Mechanical Man has a form which is slow, might have a bit of vocal in it, and then it speeds up, and then it's got this amazing guitar riff. And I just love the fact that the guitarist made a big deal out of the ninth interval.
Oh, yeah.
It was really into intervals and harmony and such, and I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah. I'm not a theorist by any stretch, but I've picked up quite a lot over the years, as you do.
I'm sure you are. When it came in, I'm not holding a knife. And, mind you, I can't remember what drugs we were taking at the time.
Well, that's probably because they were good drugs. Yeah. Tell us about when you moved to Portobello Road then.
Oh, that Portobello Road was it in 1969. Right. I was with this band. We were starving, really. We didn't really have much money, but we were trashing at some people's place just off Portobello Road, near Basin Street Studios, where...
Oh, yeah. So I'm wet.
Yeah, and Basin Street Studios. I remember we talked about it. And of course, I ended up working there later. But this was 1969. Yeah, we were just crashing there. I mean, we did a jam with the Fleetwood Mac guitarist, the one that ended up having to leave the band. That was the year they had to leave the band because he had some mental issues.
Right.
I forgot his name. The main guitarist.
Yeah.
And we had a jam with him. I can distinctly remember. It was at Eel Pie Island. It was like a open air festival. I mean, you know, it was a hippie time, really. Pink Fairy's top of the bill. But I can distinctly remember him having some empathy to me when I was jamming on the viola.
Peter Green.
Peter Green, yeah. But I was so nervous that I did some crazy ad hoc sort of thing on the viola, which was almost like whole tone or something. And I did. I thought, God, pull yourself together. But I didn't like blues. I didn't like flat and seventh chords, you know. So I prefer to do odd things like major sevens. But I didn't really like what I was doing. I was nervous when I did that. And he just picked it up and played it back to me in the same way. He just heard it and played it back to me.
Wow.
I was like, what? Of course, I heard he had some problems later on. No, nothing happened too much at that time. But of course, my friend, the drummer, Wayne Goddard, is not around anymore. God, I mean, he died in 1975, you know, bloody drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
Thing is, he took me to see to bands at the Roundhouse in 1969.
Wow. Did you see Pink Floyd? Huh?
No, I didn't. But yeah, I saw some psychedelic bands. I didn't get to see Pink Floyd. But I Yamashita, I saw Yorkshireman. There was like a theatre thing as well, Japanese theatre. But it was all a bit of a haze then. And before I knew it, like I said, I got cheeked out and I was back at home. But it was just great to have a taste of London. And then taste, I really did like it. I mean, at that time, because we were starving, I had a friend who worked at the Hilton, and he was letting me come in through the back of the Hilton into the catering area and getting a free meal.
So tell me about meeting John Fox.
Oh, well, John Fox, yeah. I mean, that was, it was when I left the music college, and I was still around in Huddersfield in 1970, and there was this drama teacher who wanted to do some performance art, and he got in touch with me through this guy who was in the drama department, a friend of mine. So we ended up doing this performance art thing, and it became called Ritual Theatre. We just did a bit of it, and then we disbanded, and I went off, and I was in another band in Bristol with the guitarist that became The Only Ones.
Oh, right.
That didn't work. I got blown off stage because my amplifier on my violin was just so rubbish. It was ridiculous. I just got blown off stage. But anyway, so I've done some other work. I spent some time in Bath as well, playing with this singer called Jeff Stars, who put a band together called Interview. They signed to Virgin. So I was doing some things with singers, really.
Yeah.
Learning about the idea of a song, but improvising on the viola. And then I was called up. That thing with Jeff Stars didn't work out. And I was living in London. I was living in a spot in Islington, actually. And then I was called back up to do some more with this performance art group called Ritual Theatre in 1972. And we did a lot of it. And we did some gigs in Holland. And we did the ICA. We did the Sheffield Crucible up at the Edinburgh Festival. Great. I really enjoyed it because it was very expressive. It was all improvisation. It was totally off the wall with a cellist and a flautist and sort of a guy who played, Clive Barlow also played Japanese flute. And Colin Wood, I don't know where Colin Wood is now, so he was an amazing choice. So that was a great experience, an avant-garde sort of thing, really, but I've been connecting with performers physically, right? So that was that. And then because we didn't get a grant with the Arts Council, I thought, oh, here we go, we've got this snobbery come up again.
Yeah.
There's some guy called Peter, who had been getting this money for ages, and he was in South America somewhere. And I was a bit egged off because we were trying to bring it to the people here, the study of ritual. And so I talked off about that. I thought, right, I'm just going to do music now. I've had enough of this. But I went home, and unfortunately, I had to do a terrible job again. It wasn't terrible. It was just physical jobs I had to do occasionally, like stacking booze, a booze warehouse.
Yeah.
But having done that, I enjoyed it because it was just camaraderie with friends, That's such a great time,
Yeah.
like crazy, drinking the booze at Christmas. But, just a normal life, going out on Friday night and Saturday night and just being normal, right? And then I became a paste-up artist as well. So I could...
What does that mean?
Well, in the days when they laid out books, they literally had to paste the pages on each page to make the actual books. And I can't remember much now, but my part as the paste-up artist was just doing corrections where you take it out. There was no computers involved because it was like 1973.
Yeah.
I think it took photocopies of it or something. So each page had to be laid out. It's such a long time ago now, I can't remember. I can't remember much about it because I got sacked pretty quick. It was just great to turn up in trendy clothes, so get up in mucky jeans. So one of the performers, Eddie Francis, that had been in the Ritual Theatre, he was down in London, and he just got in touch with me on the phone and said, "What the hell are you doing? Get your ass back down here, come on. I'm performing at this band's gigs." I said, "Performing? What do you mean performing?" "Well, like Ritual Theatre, sort of just doing movement and whatever I feel to this band called Tiger Liberty. And I could introduce you to John, not John, he was called Dennis, then Dennis Lee. He's a nice guy. He's from Lancashire. I'm sure you could get on. Not just because he's Lancashire. There's a good chance we couldn't. But, it was like, come on, put out the bait, really. And I thought, yeah, the time's right. This was early 1973. And I got my backside down there because there was this artist guy that I knew was at Camberwell studying, and he let me just take over his flat while they went on holiday with his wife in Clapham North. So I had a bass. It was for about 6 weeks as well. And in that time, I met up with John in their rehearsal space, which was at King's Cross, which was fantastic to have a rehearsal space, which was just from this guy who had shops. He used to have this space where they used to make up the dummies and dress the dummies.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
And we used to have to room at the back. And when I saw how we'd got it together and everything, and I talked to John, it was nice. Sorry, Dennis. It was so nice to talk to him. I felt like he'd really got something going. And I liked the way he was down to earth as well and realistic. He'd got a place to rehearse. Everyone in the band doesn't bring money where he's into the band. They have to sort that out themselves. We haven't got any money. But he laid it on me straight. And then I went up to his flat up in Highgate. He had a flat up in Highgate. And he was at the Royal College of Art at the time. And I just played the violin for him. I'd just gone back onto the violin then because I'd actually sold my viola.
Oh, no.
God knows why I'd done that. I bought a guitar, the Gibson SGs. I must have been mad. And I'd actually got caught up in the Scientologists as well.
No.
Yeah, and I paid some money to them as well. I was I was lost. Mate. And so I got away from that anyway. I played a lot with a musician when I was in the Scientologist thing down at St. Hill, and I actually did some gigs. And when I buggered off, they just left me alone because I was obviously a musician. They were quite soft on me. But so that's that. And when I played for John, and I was back on the violin, and I remember in this place in Highgate, and I've been doing a lot of improvisation to songs with this guy, Jeff Stars in Bath. And so I was quite used to it, really. And he seemed to like what I did, and we seemed to hit it off. I was playing, improvising violin to his songs, basically.
Mm.
And I got the thumbs up, and I was in. But I used to have to stand in the rehearsal place, absolutely deafening, and most of the time not having to do it, not doing anything. And I just had this sort of cheap Japanese pickup on the fiddle, and just every now and again I used to play violin, simply because you can't have violin on every track,
Well, I'm friends with Richard Strange from Doctors of Madness, and he's been on the podcast as well. And they used to have an electric violinist in their band, and I was always so impressed with the fact. I thought you must have nicked that idea from them, of course, stupid. But you know, I remember seeing you on various TV shows. I was always impressed with your presence on the screen because you engage with the camera, you engage with the audience. It was really interesting. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
What, like you talked about me?
I was talking about you, yeah.
That's very nice of you to say. Thanks very much, Martin. That's nice of you to say. Yeah, there weren't very many violinists around. The violinist from Richard Strange, I've seen him a few times. I would have seen him, but I can't remember much about that. But like you said, there weren't very many violinists around. But I was pleased to get back on the violin again because it was more of a fitted in a band easier.
Yeah.
Put through more, you know. And when I was with the band in 1969, I remember they played me Hot Rats, and it was John McVie.
Yeah.
And they kept saying, "Can't you play like him?" I said, "I'm playing everybody." No, so there wasn't that many people to learn from. But eventually, we did that for 3 years. And again, I had to do more crappy jobs working in a warehouse at Dunhill's at Green Park on Piccadilly. But I liked doing it because I like being part of the human race.
Yeah, me too. I've got quite fond memories of the kind of that kind of work because you know what, your mind is free while you're doing the physical work, but you've still got friends around you. Yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah, did you do some quite physical?
Yeah, I was a training manager at the co-op. I was boning bacon and stacking shelves and hacking off giant piece of cheese and giving them away for free to pensioners and stuff. And
that's fun. Yeah, but the thing is, you've got your intelligent and academic side of you enable you to get into a managerial position, which is
they said if you play your cards right, you can have your own branch by the time you're 35. And I went, no, you're all right. And I resigned the next day. I was when I was 20, I think.
And I remember having a job once. Some bloke once said, "You're telling me, you could work here, all your life, and we could do this. You fit in really well."
No,
that's really nice of you.
No, anyway, let's get on to getting signed with Ultravox. Who came up with the name, by the way?
John. Yes, yeah.
Right.
Getting signed was this process of from 1973 to 1976. I held down a job. Warren and Chris were cleaning toilets or something in the middle of the night jobs.
My God.
Stephen Shears, the guitarist from Dagenham, he seemed to master the art of signing on. Cheeky bastard. And John, I was at Royal College of Art, so he had his grant. And we kept at it. And we had that intermediary thing where we put a version of Misbehaving out and we called records. And it was for this soft porn film. But they took this other guy, this jazz's version of it. And I've forgotten his name, sorry. It did take our rock version of it. But that was fun, playing the violin solo on Misbehaving. And then we got the bit that John said, "Oh, I met this guy. He can get us into Polygram Studios at the weekend on downtime," called Steve Willywhite. And so it was in 1975 when we just trekked in at the weekend. What it was like, we were there all weekend, till about 6 in the morning.
It must have been a dream at the time.
It was an absolute dream. And it was just, I don't know if you know where it is, it used to be. It was Stanhope Place, just on the corner at the top of Edgware Road.
Yeah.
By the Marble Arch,
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were seeing things that bands like Status Quo had been messing around with the day before, editing bits, Steve was saying, "Oh, yeah, Status Quo, they did this." I was editing some stuff for them, Stars, but I'm only this far from being a star.
Right.